moderating or thing?
Moderating. Welcome to the show. I've got Chris Parna from Minnesota State Mankato. I had no idea that Mankato was a state, but we'll get to that later. He is the head sprints and hurdles coach for that group. He has been there for quite some time, had a lot of success. He's had multiple national champions. And he also had a young man who set the all-time national record in the 60-meter hurdles. Chris, glad to have you on the show. Excited to talk to you about why Minnesota, why Mankato is a state. My brother always gives me a hard time about that. But welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure. A pleasure as usual.
Tell us a little bit about where you're coming from and what you got going on in the next couple days.
Where I'm coming from as far as like my town?
Your physical, geographical location.
Excellent. Yeah, so we are about 80 miles south of the Twin Cities, Jim. You've been here numerous times. Town of combined population with surrounding areas about 100,000. Nice.
The great state of Mankato.
Yes, the great state of Mankato. So, no, it's nice here. You know, it's pushing 60, 75 degrees. And I am leaving tomorrow. We're going to go up to the family cabin up north, up in Lutsen, where it'll not be 75 degrees. It'll probably be about 55 or 60.
What do you do in a cabin? I mean, like a lot of people where I'm from, I'm in North Carolina, beach houses, right. Mountain houses. What's a cabin like in your area in Minnesota?
Well, once you get north of Duluth, it gets, well, Duluth is beautiful too, but once you get up on the North Shore, we're about 5 miles up from Lake Superior, her cabin. So it's right on Caribou Lake, which is one of the bigger ones up there. It's just a lot of hanging out at well, now not a whole lot of stuff's open. We'll go up to Grand Marais, which is a great place, and the town about 20 miles north. And, you know, there's a nice brewery up there, sit on the lake and on the beach and just check it all out. And then we'll spend some quality time at the cabin, not doing a whole lot, just grilling, cooking, sitting by the fire, you know, drinking beer and having a good time.
You know, Chris, I was one of your attendants at your wedding, and we spent a little time at a cabin. Could a person who's traveling with you and your family to the cabin expect a similar experience where it's just focused on relaxation and really just enjoying the presence of other people?
Yeah, the cabin that we rented for the wedding, though, is about 14 times better than the family cabin that we're going to. The cabin up north in Lutsen, it's nice. Don't get me wrong. It's like a 2-bedroom on an awesome plot of land, like right on Caribou Lake. No indoor plumbing, no nothing like that. I mean, it's pretty bare bones on that. Huh? Yeah, I mean, it's rustic for sure. And but just the idea of being up there is great. I mean, there's a little town. I mean, I guess the town of Lutsen, and there's like the ski resort, which is the biggest one in Minnesota, which is, again, not saying much, but it's at least the biggest one in Minnesota. They got a bunch of mountain bike trails and all that too, so I'm bringing the bike up and spend some time over there. But no, it's beautiful area, beautiful country. And
it's in the Iron Range then?
Sort of. I mean, that's kind of west. That's west of kind of the North Shore area. So it's on the North Shore. So it's right as Minnesota kind of juts out to the right and to the east. You just follow that right up on the lake, and we're essentially about 5 miles up from the lake. So,
you know, normally you're going up there to escape the heat. You're going up there to kind of get away from things. It's been kind of cool here in North Carolina up to this point with projected highs through the first week of June of like 80. What's it been like for you guys?
You know, we've been on a good streak of weather. It's supposed to rain, you know, quite a bit this next week, but we've been anywhere from probably 65 to 75 degrees. And then it'll drop down to like 45, 50 at night. But around here, it's pretty phenomenal, honestly. It's kind of almost like a fall weather, early spring. We're kind of getting lucky. Haven't had any like rogue snowstorms or anything like that. Up north, though, you get the lake effects. It'll definitely be a little bit cooler. It'll be flannel weather and jeans and that kind of stuff. But no, I mean,
that's my weather.
No, agreed. There's no way I could live in North Carolina or South Carolina or anywhere over there. I would melt away. 80 would be very hot for me. So.
You and I lived together for a period of time. We're familiar in that we worked on the same staff.
Yep.
Tell me what it is like being married and having a child and how that's changed how you live.
Yeah, no, it's definitely changed. There's not a whole lot of time to kick back and just hang out. I mean, there's always a little guy to be monitoring, and now he's getting to the point where, with assistance, obviously he'll be standing and doing all sorts of stuff and start kind of moving around like that. And so now we have a pack and play, thank God. We can just kind of park him in there with all his toys. And so we at least know where he's at. And instead of, we have hardwood throughout the house, but then we'll have some thicker rugs depending on what room you're in, and he'll roll right off the rug and, be on the hardwood and then be crying because he can't get off it. And all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just more planning around that, kind of tag teaming the parenting side of it. Like, hey, I got to go do this, or I'll take him now and you take him later. Or naps have really gone astray unless you're going to nap while he naps, which is tough because you never know how long his naps are going to be. So no, I mean, it's good. It's obviously rewarding, and blessed to have such a great kid and all that. But yeah, it's totally different. We'll put it that way. So, and people warn you the whole time, like say, hey, it's going to be different, like your life's going to change, and you're all like, yeah. But you truly have to go through it and kind of experience it to really understand all that. But it's been good. Can't complain.
Good. We've got a 1-year-old ourselves, and I find myself having an irrational, not affection, but preference for my kids. Which I think is biological, right?
Sure.
Can you talk to that a little bit? I mean, first child, first son. What are your thoughts? I mean, is he like the greatest thing ever? What kind of introspectively have you gone through as you see him mature and reflect who you are, physiologically and then psychologically too, as he interacts with you?
Yeah, no, he's the man. He's super playful, always smiling, always in a good mood. He's just giggling like crazy now. He doesn't get he gets fussy here and there, but he's definitely cutting some teeth and, trying to get those things through the gums. That's for sure. And we're dealing with some ear infection type stuff too. So outside of that, very well-mannered, great temper. We're getting better at the nighttime stuff. He's only waking up once, maybe twice, depending on what it is. And that's just to eat because he's a big kid. But no, he's tall. He's super long. He was 22 inches when he was born, and now I think he's 28 or 27 or 28 now. So he's just got super long legs, and I mean, he's thin now. He's not like super chubby, but he's definitely got some chub to him. But yeah, no, he's just the man. I mean, like you said, I think he's the cutest thing ever. So is my wife, and other people say he is, but it's exactly like you said. You just have that irrational, like, there's really no explaining it. You just think he's the greatest thing ever, and obviously, it is. So,
so I try to internalize that. We have my wife, who is on one end of the spectrum, who will tell you how great or how much better our child is than yours. Then there's me on the other end of the spectrum where people are like, tell me about how great he is. And I'm like, I mean, he's a baby. He meets expectations.
Yeah.
Where do you find yourself on the spectrum when you interact with people?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm equally where you're at. And I think my wife is more closer to where you're at as well. Like, I think she shows it more through pictures. I mean, being a photographer and all that. I mean, she's always posting pictures, and you're getting a ton of comments and all that by all her friends and all that. And when I post it, it's pretty much just Oggy appreciation post. And then, like, I just kind of track those throughout the weeks. And don't say much about it other than the fact that, or like a picture of him eating and it says he loves eating, like, just pretty basic stuff. But I'm more concerned with just making sure he's kind of hitting milestones, and obviously getting I want him to be excited about music and all that kind of stuff. And he's got every toy in the world, and he knows how they all work, and he's a bright little kid. So yeah, I would say I internalize a little bit more. But when you hear, hey, you get a super cute kid, it's always, yeah, thank you. I used to not say thank you, and I used to just be like, yeah, I know. Like, he's super cute, And then my wife's like, you should say, like, thank you. It's like, oh, yeah, I guess. Thank you. Yes.
So, Chris, you and I share an affinity for music. And one of those things that we share is percussion patterns, the drums, if you will. Are you building in percussive patterns or rudiments with your interactions with Oggy? I'm not going to lie. I'm teaching Jackson paradiddles on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah, no, I do all the time. I have my little practice pad and my sticks out in the living room, so we'll do that. I'll play guitar, ukulele around him too, and like just playing music when we're eating in the morning, and bath time he gets music and all that. So yeah, like when he won't eat and he's in his chair, like I just kind of tap along on his little table thing that goes into the chair. And so yeah, no, there's definitely gonna be part of that. And I have Sarah convinced, hopefully, I think, to get a electric drum set one of these days. I have mine downstairs, but it's obviously loud, and so I'm never going to sell that because I love it. But at the same time, we'll get an electric one so he can kind of grow up learning on that. And then when we're old enough, he can switch over to the acoustic, and then I can play along with him on the other one. But
You know, I've been told that the only way that I can ever have a drum set is if I build a shed with acoustical baffling in it that is not connected to the house.
and you're going to do that.
I got money all saved up for it.
Right, exactly. So, no, and it's I've had mine for a long time, and it was very expensive when we bought it, and I never want to get rid of it because you're never going to recoup that money for one, and it's a beautiful set that I just
And
want
you've got a custom snare. I remember when you purchased the wood for the snare and all of the hardware for it. I mean, the amount of time, you're never going to recoup that.
No, and I actually want to not lacquer it, but put some sort of finish on that finally. So because it needs a little bit of adjusting, but we'll wait for summer projects. We were redoing the bathroom and all that kind of crap first. So
coincidentally, I stumbled into a conversation with a friend of mine who's in a friend group of ours that actually played percussion in the band at Ohio State. So he's got his practice pad, he's got sticks, all that stuff. And we were over at the house the other day, and I was able to get him out. And I never grew up. And one of the greatest regrets that I have is that I had parents that didn't understand anything about music.
Right.
And then the people who gave me drum lessons also just like, they could read music and they would be like, here are the 25 canned lessons out of this book that we're going to go through. But there were never rudiments, there were never structures. I never learned to build my chops, which you understand what that means. But super disappointed about that. Can you talk to us about your journey into music and kind of like how you got into it and maybe regrets or reflections on it?
Yeah, I think, well, it started in middle school. I mean, I always wanted to do it earlier, and so I was in piano and all that kind of stuff growing up. And then actual like organized band was middle school when we started learning how percussion and all that kind of stuff. And then I was fortunate my friend's parents had bought him a drum set who was also doing it. So anytime we were over his house, he always had a spot that we could play. It wasn't honestly like I did drumline, like marching band in middle school, and that kind of opened me up to like more of the core style stuff. And then high school, obviously that took off. We had a really accomplished band, kind of a state champion level band. So it was fun to be a part of that. It was an actual class that we took. So an entire hour and a half period was just band, or marching band at least. So we'd go out and practice the shows and do all that kind of stuff too. So there was, obviously that was kind of year round. You'd go parade season to field season. And then it turned into winter drum lines that I started getting mixed into. I ended up playing for another high schools in Minnesota as well, in like an open category. And so that just kind of took off the drum side. I think the biggest regret is I tried out for drum corps, which is kind of like the summer, like highest level kind of professional, blah, blah, blah. Not necessarily professional, but like the highest level marching band and all that in the summer. I think probably the biggest regret is not doing that. I only tried out once, and the organization I want to be a part of it didn't make it the first year. Then I ended up going into a different organization, but did march in the summer. So I think that's probably the number one regret. It would have been cool. I mean, they still have those shows, DCI and Drum Corps International, all that. But then from there, it was getting involved with jazz bands, some more of the drum set side of things in high school. And then, obviously that led into getting into a bands and doing all that kind of stuff through college and playing and making music. And now it's just a hobby. I mean, just turn on your iTunes and just scroll through the songs, play along with them. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like I learned how to read music, obviously, and read rhythmic patterns and all that kind of stuff. But now it's just fun, just kind of going off the cuff and playing all sorts of different styles of music and all that. But because unfortunately, the music that I enjoy is very, very difficult, double bassing, pedals, and blah, 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 all that. So I can play some of it. But yeah, I mean, some of that stuff gets pretty extreme and I'd have to dedicate a lot of time. But I don't know. I think it's like anything. I was kind of, jack of all trades, master of none. What is that statement? I was kind of in, right.
Decathlete, guilty.
Well, right. Yeah. So it was like, I was doing I was doing track in high school. I was doing football in high school, but I was doing drumline at the same time. And it was just like from here to here to here to here. So it's like, you don't ever get to the point where you're really deep into it.
Yeah.
Like you get to the point where you're very good, but it's like to get to the next level, then there's obviously like to play football in college, which I would never wanted to do, or
So
to play at the
there,
next.
we had a family friend of ours, and I'll just tag on to the end of this, who was very interested in piano.
Yep.
She practiced 4 to 6 hours per day.
Yep.
And whatever the organization was that put on the piano competitions, she was top 3 to 4 in her age group pianist every year.
Mm-hmm.
To contrast that, you had me, who was a member of choir, band. We did football, I did basketball, I did track, I was in the play, I was in
Right.
jazz band, I was in jazz choir. I never had a study hall in high school, but I
Right.
never mastered anything, right? Just like you.
No, and then you got to weigh the good and the bad. Like you become very good at multiple things, and you become kind of that, like, again, the jack of all trades. And now it's fun as like a homeowner and like a dad and all this other stuff, because it's like now you have these projects you feel like you can do, and I have like general sense of an understanding of a lot of different things, but I'm never going to build a house by myself because I don't have that much of an understanding, or I'm never going to, even try to fix the engine on my boat. I'll just bring that to a guy that knows what the heck he's doing, So, no, it's always interesting. I look back and it's like, would I have wanted to just throw myself into one and gotten really good at it? Probably not, because I had a great life of figuring all that stuff out, learning a lot of things. And I think that opens up many of opportunities that you can choose from. And, I mean, you called me to offer me a GA spot. I wasn't even thinking about that, and to make track a career. I was just gonna move out east, play with the band, or start teaching somewhere, and it worked out that now I'm coaching 11 years later. So it works out pretty well.
Let's walk back to just before that period of time when you and I got in contact with one another and talked about getting into the world of coaching, like what we do.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your incredibly unique experience that you had. Frame it, talk about it however you want. Student teaching.
Oh yeah. So yeah, and so obviously as a collegiate athlete, you don't really get too much of an opportunity to do study abroad or anything like that. And summers I was pretty busy, whether it was working at that camp or I was doing those drum lines in the summers or whatever it was. So there's never really any time. So I finally sought out a program that you could student teach abroad. So the cohort of students ahead of us in those classes, there was a group that went. So it was supposed to be an 8-week program. We'd go down and teach in Belize for 8 weeks. Originally, we were supposed to go to Mauritius, which is like an island off of Africa. That program kind of got moved around, and then there's another one we were supposed to go to Ireland for a while, and that got moved around, and so there was finally it ended up going back to Belize, which I was fine with. It's whatever. So I originally, the first 8 weeks I was down at Brooklyn Center High School. I was living in Uptown with my sister who had an apartment there. Student taught for 8 weeks there, and then we took off to Belize for 8 weeks. And it was phenomenal. We stayed with host families. So I was with one other guy. There was 8 of us. One other guy was with the host family. We lived out in this place called Indianville that was, pretty run down, a little bit of a shack style setup. For me, not liking many insects, and like the reason I live up north is because they all die in the summer or in the winter. There's tarantulas and those little gecko things flying around, and like anything you could think of. Like every morning you're woken up by the roosters, and so it was totally adaptation. And then the school we taught at, like we brought down a lot of the equipment, and we were teaching almost 90-minute classes 3 times a day in 90-degree heat. We had like a cement concrete pad with 2 hoops, and the entire 6 weeks that we were actually teaching, because they messed up the schedule, which we'll get to, we were just teaching basketball. And that was like 6 weeks of basketball with like kids that weren't overly interested in basketball. So, and you got 2 hoops and like 6 balls. So it's like, well, in a group of 40 kids. So not only am I just dying of heat out there and sweating, but we're trying to go through it. And the teaching in itself, I didn't necessarily enjoy when I was down there. I mean, it was fine. The experience was great, but just wasn't really set up too well for success. And then, we were supposed to teach 8 weeks. They ended up messing up the schedule down there. So they went on holiday break. And so me and Chris and Kyle, some of the people I was with, we just took off and traveled as we were doing anyway on the weekends. And we ended up going down through Guatemala and over to El Salvador and did some surfing. And I mean, we spent like 2 weeks in, I don't remember what it was called. Well, we ended up staying.
You told me about the park that you guys went and stayed at.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of the town, but we stayed at this awesome Spanish colonial town in Guatemala for like 2 weeks at this hostel. Just met a bunch of people and just climbed volcanoes and did all sorts of crazy stuff. So it's funny, you look back at the pictures and you read the journals and stuff from it, and it's like, you remember half the stuff, but just having a lot of fun. So we ended up buying tickets to come back earlier before Christmas because we were eventually going to stay after Christmas, but we had those extra 3 weeks or whatever of traveling. So we ended up moving tickets up because we were running out of money and didn't really want to stay there anymore. I mean, it was just kind of becoming the same thing over and over. So we flew back, and definitely something I won't ever forget or regret. And then I ended up actually having a semester left of college to finish a couple classes left. And then I had some eligibility left. And then obviously that's when we got in touch. But then going back up for that last semester was obviously a blast. Have kind of your last semester of college. And I was living up on an awesome hill in Duluth, checking out the town and having a great time. So yeah, no, it was an experience. I mean, we could have a 5-hour conversation about beliefs.
Yeah. So walk me through this. One of the things that I always talk about from my educational experience is that I came from a liberal arts education, and the whole concept is developing critical thinkers. How did your experience in undergrad and grad developing you as a critical thinker, how does that play into what you do on a regular basis with track and field?
Yeah, no, I think I wanted to do athletic training, and then I remember at orientation they told me that I couldn't do that in a sport, which I didn't realize. And then I switched to Phi Ed right there, and they had an awesome program and still do up at Duluth with physical education. Like, you're kind of just thrown into the schools right away, and a lot of hands-on stuff. And we had some really awesome mentorship style professors that were really, really into the cohorts of students. So it was probably the idea of getting used to teaching and being in front of people like early on. And I think that's a skill in coaching, obviously, which is huge and which is massively lacked in a lot of schools and a lot of setups and a lot of coaching staffs. People might know the sport, they might know, the individual events, but they have no clue on how to deal with people or how to teach or how to take concepts and actually apply them. So they end up just regurgitating a bunch of stuff that isn't never applied. But so I feel like teaching and going through that program helped me immensely, because there was obviously a bunch of learning opportunities on the way with young coaching and just dealing with situations. And kids are supposed to love track, but some days they show up and it's just not happening. And how do you deal with that? And how do you balance out 120 people or 150 people on your roster, whatever it is? So there's a lot of learning early on in coaching, and now I feel like I have a better grasp of it, but there's always learning all the time. And just, I think, dealing with people and then taking almost like an outside view of every scenario and like, okay, how are we going to react? How are we going to play this out? Is it really that big of a deal? What's going on? And if it is, then what pattern or what path do we take? So yeah, I mean, I think tenfold having the liberal arts style where you were taking multiple different subject areas, but also starting in a phenomenal teaching education program and learning that style of things and the psychology behind it. You start to realize that relationships and dealing with people and coaching, especially, is recruiting talent and then managing that talent. Half the time you could do wrong stuff on the track and still get good results. You might not get the best results, but you're still going to get good results just because people are happy. So happy and healthy athletes go a lot farther than mad ones. That's for sure. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway. And obviously I had a lot of people in the beginning of coaching here and at Oggy that really helped me kind of see that stuff early on. And then, I mean, I would say all we talked about was track when I lived with you,
Well, the other part of it too is that I was so ignorant of the reality of what we needed to do that I think you and I both stumbled upon the reality of what we needed to do at the exact same time. You went to Minnesota, you got to do some coaching education. I went to Queens, I got some coaching education. I was like, maybe we shouldn't be doing 16 times 200 with a minute 30 recovery in
Yeah.
March.
No, for sure. And it's funny when you look
We have
back.
great 600 and 800 meter athletes, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's just like the pure ignorance to actually understanding what it is. And then you go do the actual educational course, and you're like, okay, now I'm learning from very good coaches and learning the more applied science to coaching. And now, I mean, we both dove into the deep end all the way to the bottom with this stuff now. And now it's okay. Now, how can we apply it to our kids, how to our athletes? But then,
It's incredible how much better my kids get, like from
yeah,
a just like fast standpoint versus we
stuff.
had Laura Popans. I coached her from 12.6 to 13.3 in 1 year versus the opposite of that. You know, it just blows my mind. Like, she ran 12.4 for Greg? You know.
Yeah. No, and that was kind of at the end of her career when she figured out that, hey, we should probably get going.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. There's so many other factors to everything, and it's hard to take individual things. And I feel like I haven't necessarily downgraded anybody. There were certain kids that have just stalled out, maybe not had it, but I don't think I ever had anybody that was, okay, I have been running this now, unless there was some outstanding external factor. I mean, we're a school that does a lot of 2 and 3 times around type thing. So it's like, hey, you've been to 2 other schools, you've been to 3 other schools. Your high school PRs are great to what you ran at your first school, but now there's all sorts of other factors. We'll take a flyer on you and see if we can do it, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. They lose motivation. It is what it is. So
you touched on something earlier that I had wanted to have you speak to. You mentioned you worked at Oggy. Now you have a child named Oggy. Is there a connection?
No, there isn't. And Sarah, my wife, makes sure it's spelled differently. It's 2 G's instead of 1 G. No, we got his name from the movie Wonder with Julie Roberts and the little boy that wears the space helmet. We liked Oggy as the nickname. So August was obviously not Augustus or Augustus or whatever we want to. Yeah, Gus. I mean, he's got, Oggy, Schmoggy, Schmogs. I mean, we call him everything in the world. So I rarely call him August, but then August Rush is a phenomenal movie that I always loved growing up. So that kind of worked out well. I was more into like figuring out girl names, and she was figuring out guy names, and then it was, August Henry. Henry was her grandpa's name, and it obviously plays well together. So no, I think it's a great name, and Oggy I love as the nickname, and sadly it has nothing to do with that. It was funny. I was telling Greg and Tracy at conference before he was born. I told him I couldn't tell him the name, but I was like, you guys are actually gonna like the name. And I remember Tracy's like, you're calling him Oggy, just as like a joke. And I was like, nope, and I was like, God, you guys get the yeah. So it's Oggy with 2 G's, not 1 G. And no, Sarah makes it known that it's not based off Augustana. So it is what it is.
Cool. Well, Chris, we're getting right down to it. We've got about 3 minutes left. I'm going to leave you with one question, and it'll be a little bit more open-ended. I haven't decided on the question yet. It's just going to come out.
Good.
What are your plans for the rest of the summer and moving into the fall?
Mm-hmm.
What do you hope happens? And we're in kind of a weird period of time. It's easy to talk about. So tell me about your specific situation.
So I just am finishing up a bathroom renovation, and then I have a deck to finish, and I'm going to plywood all the walls of my garage and insulate it and whatnot. And those are kind of the main projects. I've been doing Zoom clinics, so I'll probably keep doing some of those. Other than that, I'm just looking forward to the idea that we knocked out a lot of the stuff we needed to do over the summer already in this pandemic time. So it's going to be a lot of recruiting 2021s and, just researching and reading a bunch of stuff that I need to get caught up on. But other than that, I hope we're back in classes. It sounds like a lot of schools are pushing in that direction now. Mostly I wouldn't be able to imagine having everybody come in the spring and they would have had to work out on their own in the fall. Like that would be
That's terrifying.
Tragic. Yeah, it'd be tragic because that's where I do all the teaching.
You take 692 to make nationals in the 60 this year.
Yeah, no. So it's like, okay, that's like where I do all my teaching, and that's where I get really, I do a lot of video stuff, and I make sure that we're looking good and ready to go for the season. So that would suck if we weren't for that reason. I understand there's pandemic issues, and I get that, but hopefully as we get closer to the end of the year, there might be some sort of breakthrough with the vaccines, or I don't know. I don't think programs are going to
Seeing
survive.
any of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Without football, programs are going to start falling like crazy. So we better have football in some capacity, or even at the D2 level. I mean, that's something that obviously helps the university no matter what. So
We're the football at our school. We're from a net revenue generating standpoint. We make the most money out of any program at our school based upon how many kids compete, how much the discount rate is on each one of those kids. I did the math on like what you would make if you had football in our conference.
Yeah.
Which you were privy to because you're in the group chat. Speaking of which, how do you feel about a coaches roundtable with friends to tell a few stories about childhood development, things like that? We floated that earlier in the conversation.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I think it's always fun talking to other people about their kids and just where they're at in development and when they did certain things. And everybody's different, but it helps you kind of understand where you're at, I guess, because, I just assume you should be walking by now, but it's only 7 months. So,
well, just so you know this, I was concerned about Jackson because I've got my baby book that my mom created. It's Jim walked at 10 months or 11 months, whatever it was. And I was like, oh, Jackson's not walking. He's just kind of like standing there. 1 week later, he's basically running. So things change overnight. But okay, we are at the end of our time. Chris Parno from Minnesota State Mankato, the sprints hurdles coach there. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day, your prep before you head to the cabin. Look forward to speaking to you in the future. Thanks.
Yes.
Have a good one.
Yes.